So I want to thank you so much for taking the time to join us this morning. It's still morning here. Can you do a little presentation of yourself so at least we can take it up from there? Thank you
Okay.
again for joining us. Hello and welcome to Obehi Podcast. I'm your host, Obehi Ewanfo, and I strongly believe that everyone has a story to share. Now let's get started with this episode.
Thank you very much for having me. Really pleased to be here and discuss my journey with you. So, just to tell you a bit about myself, my name is Shara Lewis Campbell, and I am the co-founder of Beauty and the Beast Publishing. I've been in the industry almost 30 years. I've been publishing way before I became an author of sorts. And to date, I have 7 books of my own out, and I have published 60 aspiring authors. And 16 of those have come from challenging backgrounds. So, yeah, we're very pleased.
Challenging background. What do you mean by that? Can you share a
So,
little
people
word
that are not,
there?
yeah, certainly. So, typically, I would say a challenging background would be for somebody who probably has like a very unique story to tell, a very real story that would probably make a difference within society. At the moment, we have lots of people within the industry who come from typically from the background, so they were always going to be writers, etc. I didn't come from the industry. I didn't know I'm the first author in my entire family, and in order for me to become a published author, I had to create my own lane. Once I had done that, I realized that there was a niche in the market, and not only just with myself that could resonate with that, but also my business partner as well, which is the other co-founder who is unfortunately unable to be here today, which is Andrew Foster. And he heads our US base, and he looks after all the everything to do with the US out there. So he also wasn't from the wasn't from the industry either, and together we decided to set up this business, and it's been very successful for us. We've been in trading just over a year.
That's interesting. Of course, we're going to spend some time looking at that industry just now, looking at your book. But I would like to spend some few more minutes, seconds, if you like, about you. So tell me, as you were growing up, tell me a little bit about your background. So I'm
Okay,
interested because, in this podcast, we concentrate on the people. We concentrate
sure.
on your story because your story for us
Mhm.
is important. So tell us about the young you growing up.
Okay, so the young me growing up started in the very humble parts of Birmingham, which is like the largest city in the UK. And I was born in a very small place called Small Heath, hence the pun. And from what I can recall and from what my parents have told me, I as soon after I was born, within a matter of weeks, we moved to London, and the family has very much been here ever since. So London has been our base. I will say this: none of my parents actually live in the UK, so it's just myself and a few siblings that are here still. They will return to their respective countries or wherever they wanted to be in life, and we're still here. So it's a very humble beginning for me. I would say that it was slightly different, non-traditional in the sense that both of my parents are mixed race. So I have one parent who was born in Jamaica and also of mixed heritage with an Asian background. And she was one of 15 children. That was my mum. And she was made to come to the UK when she was just 5 years old. So that would have been a massive turning point and a huge sort of move in her own journey. My father was born in the UK, but to parents that were not from the UK. So his mum is Irish, and my late grandfather was Nigerian. So just to show you that we have a sort of like mix of cross cultures. And here I am today.
You are the whole world sum up together, so you will have
That's right.
a connection everywhere. That is really very rich as it were, though.
Yes, I think
Yesterday I
so. I
was,
mean,
yeah,
go ahead.
please, I'm listening to you.
No, you go ahead.
No, yesterday I was listening to a documentary that was looking at the earlier European history, the Asian history as it were, or ancient world, if you want to call it like that. No, these days people look at racism, look at discrimination as if the people in the past they didn't have time to have to deal with issues like this. Especially when you look at the fact that say maybe like European and Africa will be engaging for several thousands of years. So it become very important to even ask the question then. So how did the people even have to deal with this complexity of issue as it is there? Or maybe it wasn't really an issue. It wasn't a problem. They look at it as opportunity. Because like you now, you have a background coming from different angle. One can look at it as a problem. For another person, that is opportunity. I look at this as opportunity because I mean you have connection to different angle. So I don't know if that is how you look at it also.
I do. I do still feel like, listening to my parents' stories and my grandparents' stories, the element of racism has always been present. When my grandparents came to this country, there were notices on the doors that saying, no blacks, no Irish, no dogs. So they were affected by all of those things. When my grandmother, who was an Irish native, came to this country, there was no opportunities for her. So the opportunities were very slim. As time has gone on and people have developed better attitudes, and I think probably with the Windrush, not so much of late, but when it was first devised and people came over from that generation, I think there was probably more of a welcome. But I think as time has gone on, and especially probably since the pandemic and before then, when we sort of became part of the European nation, etc., I think that heightened racism and prejudice then. I would also say as well, like in most recent times, the rest of the world does need to catch up somewhat in terms of racism and prejudice, because as you are speaking to me here in the UK, had this been pre-2020, from 2016 until 2020, I had been living in Australia. So that was my base. And I experienced a lot of racism and prejudice there. And I wrote about those things. I mean, my first experience of being in Australia penned my first published book, because I felt compelled to write about those things. But what was important to me is the thing that you mentioned about opportunity. I have been able to turn those negative experiences around into positive experiences. So in terms of opportunities, I've created opportunities from the situations or circumstances that have, moved me, as it were, and created my own lane.
That's lovely. That's lovely. And
Thank
for
you.
us, the diaspora, we really need to tap into that. I think we have a lot of opportunity. I was interviewing also a journalist in Vatican a couple of days ago, and this was what we were talking about, particularly from the point of view of us taking advantage of where we are and try to shape our narration because it is very important. All right, we are moving
Yes.
to an even more interesting part of the conversation now, which is your book writing, and later we'll talk about your book publishing. So, how did you get started into book publishing? What were the things that influenced you into taking a line in it? Because you could have been in some other area. So, why book writing to start with?
By book writing, I'd always wanted to be an author as long as I can remember, as a child. I mean, talking about my first experience in school, I always wanted to be an author. I don't know why. Probably I would put it down really mainly to my reading. I'm a very quick reader, and I read very quickly with understanding. So that's probably one of the few gifts and talents that I would assign to myself. My stepfather, who was the only person who ever encouraged me throughout my career and life, really, in terms of my writing and so on, he recognized that I had this talent. And, I could get through, irrespective of how thick the books were, as long as I didn't have any other duties as a child or responsibility, I could get through maybe about 3 or 4 books a day, and be able to recite that back to him, etc. So I was always very keen in literature and wanting to write and read. I think reading would have been more of my passion rather than writing back then. But English has always been a very strong subject for me. I did extremely well in it. From what I can remember throughout my entire education, whenever I wrote something, whether it be in elementary, primary, secondary, and later on, even after that, anything that I wrote, which was like say maybe a fictional piece or a non-fictional piece, an essay or a story or anything like that, would always be, or maybe a part of it, but normally would be the case that the tutor or the lecturer would read my work aloud, in a public forum to the rest of the class, etc. So that sort of encouraged me.
If you enjoy this podcast, make sure you subscribe so you never miss any of our future episodes. Rate and review Obehi Podcast and share with your friends who might need it. I remain Obehi Ewafo. Thank you so much for listening and talk to you in the next episode.